Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Hello.
We'll just wait till the hour before we get started. So we've got about one more minute and then we will get started. Actually, it says 2 o'clock now. All right, my name's Diane Bryan, and along with
Mavis Meisner, fitness and sport instructor at 17 Wing in Winnipeg.
we are presenting today the first of a series on getting race ready. With the virtual Army run and the virtual Navy bike ride coming up, we thought it would be a good idea to provide you with a series of short workshops to help you to get ready for those two races. And hopefully you'll be able to take part in them. And hello to everybody from wherever you are. Hi, Randy from Trenton. Nice to see you. And Michael and Tyler. I feel like Romper Room right now, which is dating me.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
All right, so it's kind of a fortuitous day that we're starting this whole series on getting race ready, because today is World Bicycle Day. It is also Global Running Day. So that's kind of really cool that we're starting this whole series on getting ready to do these races on this particular day. So this webinar will be about an hour in length. We will be using the chat box to do all our any questions or commenting. So please feel free to write into the chat box and to let us know how you're doing. Yeah, I think we're ready to go, Mavis.
All
so
right.
Let's get. Mavis and I are going to get rid of our pictures because you really don't need to be seeing us. And we'll turn them back on when we get to the end. All right, here we go. Things off. This is a standard slide that we show at every presentation, just to let you know that the presentation you're about to view is the intellectual property of the Department of National Defense, so no reproduction or retransmission of the slides is allowed. So some of the topics in this webinar may be of a sensitive nature. I don't think so much for this series of webinars, but some of the information is probably not going to be appropriate for children, depending on their ages. So we just ask for some parental discretion with the information that we're going to go over. And please understand that the people's stories are theirs alone to tell, and that anything that's shared by participants in this webinar on the chat is not to be discussed outside the webinar. So we'll invoke the Vegas rule. And then finally, this webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing, not on CAF Connection, but on the PSP Facebook page, which just went live, did a soft launch today. So we encourage you to actively participate in this webinar, but if you want to, you can just simply follow along without using the chat if you prefer. All right. So let's find out what your affiliation is. So we're going to put up a poll. And what I'd like to know is, so what's your affiliation with the CAF? Are you a serving member? Are you a veteran, a family member, civilian member, employee working with Department of National Defense or CFMWS or other? Oh, that's really good. So lots of military members online. That's really good to see. A couple of veterans, a family member, some civilian employees, and one other. So that's great. Welcome. We're so pleased to see you all here. So today we're going to talk about goal setting. So if you're like me, I want to do things, but the problem is I really don't set a goal to get there. So I have signed up for the Navy bike ride, but I haven't given much thought on how I'm going to get there, how I'm going to be able to complete all the biking that's going to be necessary, what that might look like. And I'm also considering signing up for the Army run too. So again, haven't really set any goals about getting there. So hopefully after today, I'll be able to take some of this information too and be able to create some goals around getting me be successful in both those activities. Right? There are many reasons why goals fail. They might be too high. I might have too many goals. They're not important enough for me, or I'm not ready for the goal that I want to take on. So we'll spend the next little while looking at how to create good, solid goals that are going to be able to get us there. So we'll be looking at those SMART goals. So today's agenda, we're going to be looking at the stages of change, SMART goals, barriers to success that we might find ourselves on, and how we can break those barriers.
Okay, to start off, we're going to take a look at the Transtheoretical model of change. What is it and how can we use it? The Transtheoretical model of change is a health-related behavior change model. Self-change is a gradual process which involves many stages. In this particular model, we've ID'd 5 stages. We all enter the cycle in pre-contemplation, and we move clockwise through the stages until we reach maintenance. So in this particular model, we also see relapse just to the left of maintenance. And that, even though it's represented as a stage in this model, might also be thought of as a transition, as we can enter relapse at any stage within this cycle. Some models also have a 6th stage, which is termination or adoption. However, for the purposes of this discussion, we're only going to be discussing the 5 that we are looking at right now. So how can this model help us? Understanding each stage will help us ID where we're at in relation to our personal healthy lifestyle behaviors. So pre-contemplation, looking closer, is often where we begin and we're likely unaware of it. We don't see there's a problem or a need to change. You might think to yourself, why would anyone want to run? If I needed to run, they wouldn't have made cars. If there's no bear chasing me, why would I run? In this stage, knowledge is power. Education to bring awareness is the most important thing to start this process. We then move into considering change. So as we enter contemplation, this stage is usually within 6 months that we remain in contemplation. We acknowledge there's a problem. We think about seriously changing something about that. For example, we might see the Army Run event posted on Facebook and think that, wow, this looks like fun. I can do this. Oh, I really want to, but I haven't got good shoes. I need to buy new shorts. I don't have anyone to run with. It's going to be boring. It's too hot outside. All we see is barriers and not possibilities when we're in contemplation. In this stage, education and peer support are the key to success. From here, we move to preparation. And this stage, we are generally in for approximately 4 weeks. We're trying out some new behaviors for short periods of time. Maybe we bought those new running shoes and gone for a couple of runs. We also take steps to identify goals. So we might consider registering for that Army run, maybe go for the 5K. We think about what's our plan, how am I going to make this happen? At this stage, you're gathering information and tools for success. So online resources, perhaps you're checking out, you're contacting your local PSP for a personal program, and you're doing a little shopping for some new gear. So key to navigating this stage is continued peer and environmental support. And for our example, the environmental would be looking at making sure we've got a safe space to run, maybe we've got paths or trails, we have facilities. Other factors that might be considered under environmental include safety of your neighborhood, which could bridge on crime, pollution, or traffic levels, which could all play a part. Wow, that month has gone super fast. Preparation is complete, and now we've moved into action. So action is defined as implementing change for a period of time up to 6 months. So this requires a lot of energy to actively change a negative behavior or adopt a new health behavior. For our novice runner, what might this look like? So possibly they might be starting to walk or run a couple of times a week. They might be changing their healthy eating habits. They might be getting more rest. In chat, could you tell us what else you think that action could look like or might look like for you? We want to start thinking about barriers also at this time to see what might impede our success. We'll be talking about that later in the session.
A good one, Lisa, making that time to get started and having the support from the family. Absolutely.
The last stage that we're reviewing is maintenance. This is continued adherence to specific strategies. So we're maintaining this specific change that we've made for up to 5 years. It's important to note that relapse is very common and it can happen at any stage of the model. Don't beat yourself up about that. Don't expect these things not to happen. Life is dynamic. Your health or lifestyle situations can change at any time, and you might experience some unexpected injury, maybe lifestyle change, perhaps career change. There are many variables to be considered. So let's go now to a poll. So thinking about participating in the Army run or the Navy bike ride, what stage of change do you think you're at right now? Pre-contemplative, haven't really thought that that's even necessary. Contemplative, oh, it might be interesting. Preparation, I'm getting ready, I'm gonna do it. Action, I've already started running. Maintenance, I'm into it. Relapse, well, that could happen, but we're gonna keep that one at bay. Excellent. So a few of you in pre-contemplation, some contemplation, preparation, very nice. Action, good to see. Good job, everyone. We have a second poll, and we're going to be looking at, do you regularly set goals for yourself? So yes, all of the time for everything, only for certain activities. No, I don't need goals. I'd like to, I just don't know how, or I like to, I just forget to do it. Good job on those who said it all the time. Only for certain activities, very much so, yes. Don't need goals, one, all right. I'd like to, but I don't know how. And that's why we're here today. We're going to figure out how to do that.
That's
one,
me.
I'd like to, but I forget to do it. I'm
like that person too. I'd like to,
you.
and I have the best intentions for setting goals, but sometimes I just forget to do it. And I'm thinking like, yeah, absolutely.
It just would have helped out so much.
I'm going to start taking my own advice and doing that.
I like it. Good job.
That's okay, Liam, if it was a misclick. Don't worry about it. Yeah. So we're going to look at some SMART goals and see about how we can get ourselves moved from whether we're in pre-contemplation, contemplation, or preparation, how we can get ourselves moved into that action phase, because SMART goals will help us to do that. So what we've got for you today is a worksheet on SMART goals. So I'm going to share that for you right now, and you're free to download the worksheet and follow along with it as we go along, looking at the different aspects of a SMART goal. All right. So as most of you know, because SMART goals are one of those things that is discussed in through basic training and any of your career training for the military, is a SMART goal. And what is a SMART goal? So SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound, or a time limit. So we're going to look individually at each one of those. Lisa, I agree with you. I definitely use a calendar so that I can make time to do stuff. And I put everything in my calendar so that I know what I'm going to do, because if it's not there, it sometimes doesn't exist for me. All right, so let's look at specific. So make sure that your goal is focused and answers some tangible outcomes. Without the specifics, your goal runs the risk of being too vague to achieve. Being more specific helps you identify what you want to achieve. It also allows you to identify resources that you may need to leverage for success. So you're looking at the who, the what, the where, the when, and the how when you're talking about specifics.
And for context, our examples today, we're going to be focusing on an athlete that is novice and they're new to running. And just to give you a definition, short-term goal would be something that's going to happen within the next 7 days, where a long-term goal would be the day of an event. So for example, if you were doing an Army race or the Navy bike ride, your long-term goal would be the day of that event. So what would a short-term goal look like? We can make it non-specific or we can make it specific. So we want to focus on specific for success. Something that might be non-specific would just be simply saying, I'm going to go out and run this week. So that's very vague. We don't have any details. We know that it's you and what we're doing, and we know it's happening this week. So we know it's short term, but we don't have any of the details to make sure we can measure that and have success with the goal. So a specific goal might say something like, I'm going to go out and run a half hour, 3 mornings this week in my neighborhood. So we're covering all those who, what, where, when, and how questions.
All right, so let's move on and look at the M, measurable. What does success look like? You should have some clear definition of success. This will help you to evaluate achievement as well as progress. This component often answers how much or how many, and highlights how you will know when you've reached your goal.
So something measurable that we can look at in a short-term goal is we can ask ourselves for how long, what time limit, are we going to be going so many kilometers, how many times per week are we doing this activity? And if we wanted to make it an even stronger goal, we can add specific days of the week or dates when we are going to complete our goal.
Yeah. So Randy's put in the chat box that he's going to run a route 1 minute faster, which is a really good measure for somebody who's been running for a while and wants to improve their running. Or even if you're biking and you want to bike that extra 5 or 10 kilometers in a day, that would also be a really good measure to give that distance.
And it also makes it more interesting because now you're adding another level of training. So you're doing an interval training. So it alleviates the boredom sometimes.
So now we're going to look at the A, achievable. Your goal should be challenging, but still reasonable to achieve. If I'm already running 5K and I'm doing it in a relatively good time, it makes no sense for me to say I'm going to run 5K in this amount of time because I've already achieved that goal. So it really has no meaning for me. So we want it to be a little bit challenging, to require us to stretch. Reflecting on this area can reveal any potential barriers that you may need to overcome to reach your goal. And we will discuss barriers later in the presentation. Right, so go ahead. No, go ahead.
So we need to be, go ahead, Diane. I was going to say, we need to be aware of the barriers because, of course, that's going to help us move through our SMART goal. So if we're looking at our beginner runner again, so what might they do to make their goal of running 3 times a week achievable? If they're planning to do a morning run, they might set themselves up the night before by setting their alarm clock maybe 45 minutes earlier, or they have their gear set out and so they're good to go, maybe even setting up their coffee maker. Is there any other ideas that anybody can think of that might be something that would allow you to make your goal more achievable?
I think one thing that's important to recognize too is where you're starting at. So what's my fitness level like right now? And if I'm going to sign up for the Army run and I'm not a runner, then perhaps wanting to sign up for the marathon might be too far. But setting myself up to do the 10 or maybe even the 15K might be an acceptable way. So paying attention to where you are currently will help you to set an achievable goal as well. Go for one before you can. That's a good one, Randy.
I know, I love that. It's good, Randy. It's a good process. I like it.
Do it now, right?
Never think too long about things.
So let's look at those realistic. And realistic, that's the why of the goal. Why are we doing this? This is about getting real with yourself and making sure that what you're trying to achieve is worthwhile to yourself. Determine if it aligns with your values and if this is a priority focus for you. So really answering that why.
So for a short-term goal and someone who's new to running or maybe even biking, they might have a short-term goal of just becoming more active, becoming more energized, improving quality of life, and that's going to happen over time. But they also want to probably support the CAF because these are events that are focused on supporting the Canadian Armed Forces as well.
Right, and we also added in the word, besides realistic, is relevant. So I always think of when somebody else buys you an exercise program or puts you on a diet when you don't really care. If I don't care about it, then I am really not going to be invested in that goal. So it's got to be, along with being realistic, it really has to be relevant to me and what I want to do.
You don't want that diet, Diane, because you're still in pre-contemplation.
That sometimes happens, though.
All about. It's true. Other people can see it, but we can't see it ourselves.
The last part of a SMART goal is to be timely or time-bound. Every goal needs a target date, something to motivate you and to really apply the focus and discipline needed to achieve that goal. This answers the question when. And it's really important to set a realistic timeline so that you don't get discouraged. And it can't be too far in the future because, again, that's really going to cause you to get discouraged or if the goal is too difficult, too close to today's date.
Agreed. And so for our short-term goal for a beginner, it might just be getting out and running or walking a couple of times a week. Whereas a long-term goal would be looking at that race day or that bike race day when you're going to be there, right. And that's when it's happening. So are there
any questions at all about SMART goals? How to set them? Or the definitions that we've given for each one of those: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely? All right, looks not. So we're going to move now into talking about barriers.
All right, there are many barriers that we could come up against when it comes to adopting a new behavior, or in this case, specifically, we're speaking to exercise. So cited often are lack of time. How are you going to fit this into your schedule? Is there any way I can take something out to make this happen? Energy. So lack of energy, always a big concern. Sometimes we're so fatigued by the end of our day. How can we possibly drag ourselves out to train? Very realistic. Lack of motivation. You know, it's true. It seems like a really good idea at the time. And then when it's in our calendar, even when it's in our calendar, sometimes we find a way to talk ourselves out of it. Perhaps, oh, it's been really hot lately, right? So, well, I'll go tomorrow. I should go in the morning. That would be a better time. Obligations. Everyone has so many responsibilities that sometimes it overwhelms us to think, how can we defer or try to delegate something that's already on our list of things to do? We've got many people in our lives, our partners, our friends, our kids. We have tasks that are coming out of every direction, whether that be at work or personal tasks. So it's really important to recognize that these obligations can be barriers and to use our resources wisely. Boredom is often cited, especially if you run. Sometimes you tend to run the same neighborhood, the same area, the same path, because you know exactly where you need to be for the time you need to achieve, or you know exactly how far you're going. This is my half-hour day, this is my hour run, this is my long run. So you tend to take the same path, and sometimes you just get a little tired of looking at the same trees, the same sidewalk, the same buildings. And lastly, a common barrier to exercise is injury. This happens to all of us. We're super enthusiastic. We get out of the gate quickly, and sometimes things don't go as well as planned. Maybe we haven't bought those new shoes and we end up with some shin splints, or maybe we didn't warm up and we end up pulling a hamstring. So there are many things that we need to consider when we talk about barriers to achieving our goals. So let's move into a poll. So what barriers might stop you from reaching your goals? So a lack of time, energy, motivation, obligation, boredom. The list does go on.
And I guess what you need to pick the one that's probably your biggest barrier. And if there's something maybe that isn't on that list, right, put it in the chat box. Ouch. Charlene, that must have hurt. Whew.
So lack of time doesn't seem to be a big problem, which is great. Energy, yes. Motivation, I see what you're saying on that one. Obligations. Everyone always has something that they would like to do with your time.
They're always asking for extra time from you, aren't they? And there are only 24 hours in a day, so that does make it difficult. Yeah.
Always good to consider reality.
For sure. Depending on where you are, if you're living downtown in a city, there may not be good bike paths for you to bike on, or decent running paths for you to be able to go out for a run. So absolutely, Brendan, that can be an issue, is that facility to be able to train. And some other barriers that might exist are being sick, illness. So, I mean, we're living in a time now where COVID-19 is a very real possibility for some of us. So to be sick and then to be not to be able to do anything for 2 weeks can really be a barrier for you to want to move forward and do your exercise, to get back on track again. Some other things are overtraining. Spending too much time training can result in injuries and just losing that passion that perhaps you had for it. Convenience. If it's not convenient for me to do, it's really hard to convince me that I want to do it. Like, it's got to be something that's extremely valuable for me to want to do. I have to be passionate about it to want to go out if it's inconvenient, right? So I have to figure out what's really looking at, what is the purpose, what is the reason why I'm choosing to do this, right? And if I have to travel someplace to do it, that's also going to be a barrier for me for exercise. If I can, just step outside and go for a 5K walk or a run from my backyard in my neighborhood, that's great. But if I have to drive somewhere to be able to do that, then that's more difficult. Same with biking. If I have to load my bike up into my vehicle and then drive somewhere so that I can bike, I might be thinking twice or 3 times or 4 times about whether or not I'm going to do it. So the fact that I can just go in the morning and hop on my bike and bike for 20 kilometers and then come back home and basically stay on bike paths the whole way and have very little traffic really is a motivator for me to be able to get out and bike. What are some other ones, Mavis? Do you have anything else?
Social factors, I think, can also play a big part. If there's no one interested in your social circle who wants to participate in the same activities that you're participating in, sometimes that's a barrier because you want to see your friends, but they're going, I don't want to go for a bike ride. Are you kidding me? Or I just want to go sit on a patio. So again, if your family also isn't into the same path as far as activities and participation goes, it can be really a challenge because you want to spend quality time with your loved ones. However, you don't want to have to force them to come along with you, and then it becomes a less enjoyable activity. Environmental, we sort of touched on that already. So if there's no safe bike paths or walking paths in your neighborhood, or maybe even rec facilities, right? And with the back to Diane's note about our times of health right now, a lot of our facilities are not open and accessible. So if you did have indoor facilities that you trained at for running, or maybe even a bike path that's no longer accessible because the park you went to isn't available at this time, that really changes your cadence as to what you're doing for your training, because that might have fit really well into your day. For example, if you went to a facility on your lunch hour, that's no longer open. Lunch hour is the only time. There's no showers available, so you're probably not going to do it if you're still at the office. Go for a run and then come back and then have to get back into your uniform. It's not as convenient as we'd like it to be. Sometimes cost can be very prohibitive also, not specifically for the running that we're talking about in our examples today or biking necessarily, but other activities where you might belong to a club that is going to be charging you fees for whatever activity, or you belong to a rec center. Sometimes those add up, and especially the more people that you have on your membership, the more expensive that membership's going to be. And of course, you want your whole family to be active. Totally reasonable. And lastly, we talked a little bit about the whole self-management. Like, we all think it's a great idea, but depending where we're at in that transtheoretical model of change, it might not be happening for us right now, even though we really want it to happen.
That's a really good point too that you make, that so now everything is being booked. When you want to go back to, I know in Manitoba, our fitness facilities have been allowed to open this past week, but everything is by appointment only. So we have to book ahead. Sometimes I'm a bit spontaneous and booking ahead. If I want to book in the evening, am I allowed to book in the evening? Is it actually even opened in the evening? So yeah, that can be a really huge barrier as well.
So we talked about a few barriers here. Let's go into a poll. What is a barrier that might stop you from reaching your goal? So we've got the things that we mentioned: lack of time, lack of energy, motivation, perhaps obligations, boredom. Motivation. I hear you. Lack of energy. Totally. I find the best thing if and when possible, first thing in the morning, straight out of the gate. How about you, Diane?
Yeah, I'm a first thing in the morning person for sure. I was out this morning at 5:30. So I know if I don't do it first thing in the morning, I will find reasons not to do it. So I really need to get out there and do it.
And that's also really important to know when you have the best energy level of the day. Everybody has a different cadence, and to try to schedule your training sessions in during those points in time. So for you, Diana, you said it was the morning. Some people it might be in the evening, depending on what your biological clock looks like.
I think when my children were smaller, it would be the evening that I would be doing it, like after they were in bed. So for sure, or when they were at school. So it all depends on what's happening with you right now, for sure.
So now that we've sort of looked at what the barriers are here, going into the chat box, can anyone give us some suggestions how to break down or overcome some of these barriers? 7 to 9 p.m. Wow, night owl. Training partner, yes. I love that. That really keeps you accountable, right? And motivates you. And actually, it's a really good way to socialize and catch up with people.
Right. And as long as you maintain your physical distancing.
With you, of course. Yeah,
having a coach.
Definitely, in an appropriate way. Oh, yeah. Nice. You know, and sometimes when we put a dollar sign beside whatever we're doing, it motivates, I know it motivates me, right? I've made an investment.
New to beat the boredom.
Let's go.
For sure. Like maybe go a different route, pick out a different route, or run your route backwards.
Oh, I like that. Because, you know, sometimes I do that too, Diane. Yeah. And I think it all looks new to me, right? When I go the opposite direction. As strange as that sounds. Interval training too, really good idea, like for beating the boredom, like changing up your style of training.
Don't expect to achieve your goal. Yeah. So really looking at creating that SMART goal to make sure that it is that you've given yourself enough time to be able to create that goal. Yeah. You set your goal too high, make it too fast, too soon, too difficult, then Brendan, yeah, you might get frustrated because it's not achievable. And really looking at maybe setting several goals. So set that long-term goal. Like I want to do, my goal is that I want to be able to do the 15K army run, virtual army run. So I need to set myself a bunch of short-term goals to help me to get to that long-term goal. And that way I can, it's almost like for people who like checklists to be able to tick it off or scratch it off the list. So it's one down. Yeah, reward yourself for completing those short-term goals. Absolutely.
That's what I was thinking too, Charlene. Like definitely give yourself a carrot. It doesn't hurt. And you deserve it. It's a lot of work, right? Like we put the effort in. You acknowledge it for yourself.
Yeah,
you don't need to have other people acknowledge it. It's good on you. A treat. Yeah.
What am I?
Nice. Yeah, you can either bike to the ice cream stand and bike back, hey?
I did a bike ride yesterday.
Running might be a little more disruptive.
And the bakeries around here open at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I was out for about an hour and a half and made it and planned my route. So I went past a pretty good bakery that's around here, Tallgrass Prairie, and I stopped in and got a cinnamon bun to take home with me, and it was still warm. It was awesome, and what a treat that was. I know.
That's delightful. You know, you almost inspired me to get on my bike and just go for a ride, right? If I can drive by a bakery.
More fun.
Well, and it's really important when we're looking at things that are barriers to always think of solutions, because we know what's going to happen. So the more prepared we are, the better we are at overcoming and having fewer setbacks or fewer relapses when we're looking at our transitional model. For time, you know, we want to make sure that we ID times that are available in our calendar throughout the week. So you can take maybe 1 week and just do a survey, see what kind of slots are open for you, what might work for your routine. For energy levels, like we've mentioned, everybody has a peak energy level during their day, or they know how to strategically schedule in their meals and their activities so that when it comes to doing that training, they're right at the top of their game. So good nutrition, proper rest, also super important. Motivation. I really like the calendar idea. Make a date with yourself. This is important. I also really like the buddy up idea, keeping yourself accountable, getting that little visit in. Listening to great music. Everybody has their thing that kind of motivates them to drive them through or get them into their zone. Obligations. When it comes to work, perhaps we can try to shift our day to give us time to be available to have that workout time when we feel our peak energy. Try not to schedule meetings then, or we can also try to delegate if we find that there's too many things on our plate and we can't get that workout in. Also very important to think about, your wellness, whether it be not just physical, but your emotional, social, vocational, all those aspects of wellness. It all plays a part. When we're thinking about family obligations, if we have youngsters that we have to be in charge of, again, I like doing the workout later, like you had mentioned, Diane, later in the day, if the kids were in bed then, or maybe trading play dates with neighborhood people, or having, the kids along with you. A lot of people have got jogger strollers. Pop the kids in the jogger stroller, away you go. And make sure that you are still incorporating those important people in your lives, but trying to also maintain your goals that you set for yourself. Boredom, we talked a bit about that. Yeah, like going backwards on that route. Awesome idea. Changing up the goal, maybe going from the 5K to the 15K. Very nice. Interval training. There are lots of ways to switch it up. Maybe you want to take your training out to a different location. So maybe you're going to be going out for the weekend, you're in a different area, neighborhood, taking your bikes to a park, going for a run in another neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Maybe past a bakery, right, Diane? And injury, wow. So we always want to make sure that we're staying in our best physical health and well-being. Often we forget or we don't make time for a complete warm-up and a proper cool down. I know I too am guilty of that, and I wonder why my hamstrings are so tight you can play a tune on them. Also, if you're new to any of these bigger physical activity pursuits, make sure you check in with your physician first before you start any new programming. It's always a good idea. And start slow. Rome wasn't built in a day, so I don't think anybody has to, like you said, Diane, come out of the gates thinking you're going to run a marathon by the end of summer if you've never ran before. So again, being very reasonable with yourself, setting those SMART goals.
Yeah, those are
also
all really
a very
good.
good
Does anybody
idea.
else have anything that they wanted to add? The injury, I've been focusing more on my nutrition goal, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that.
Yeah.
Way to turn something
And
negative into
you were
a
saying
positive,
too that you
Charlene.
swim, Charlene, too. So with the injury with the rolled ankle, then swimming's probably not as bad either, right? Swimming or biking would be options. Abs are right in the kitchen. Vegetarian heals fast.
Are they ever?
Very
I'm going to
good.
go do a
I
plank
might
right
use
now.
that
I'll be right
one,
back.
that line, Liam, if you don't mind sometime. Oh, and paddleboarding too. Yeah, that would be good too.
Ooh, I like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Liam.
Fabulous, Cora.
So
I like that.
one more poll. Well, there's 3 more polls, but one more poll that I actually just threw up there that I'd like to ask you is, are you planning on registering for the Army Run or the Navy Bike Ride? Is this something that you've thought about doing, these 2 virtual activities that are happening? And I think there's also there's a fitness challenge out as well that's going on right now that just came up on Facebook. And I cannot for the life of me remember what it is. the calf pat challenge, I believe is what it's called, but also looking at getting out for a walk or a run every day to do something. So that is also out there.
And don't forget, your local PSP would always be posting things for you to do to challenge yourself.
Ah, okay. Yep. Sure. Yeah, you have to be very careful with your injury and making sure that you're not going to re-injure yourself or exacerbate it or make it any worse. So absolutely. So I just want to leave you with this kind of final thought. So the trouble with not having a goal is that you can spend your whole life running up and down the field and never score. Right? If I don't have a purpose or a reason for doing what I'm doing, I'm just kind of running around or almost like that hamster in the hamster wheel, just spinning around and not really getting anywhere. So that goal allows me to make the score, to have that end, to have something to look forward to, something in sight, some target that I'm aiming for. So as we're coming to the end of this, just go through some resources that we have. This is a standard page that we show on all of our presentations. So Canadian Forces Members Assistance Program, 24/7, 365 days of the year. Referral service for use by any Canadian military member or their immediate family. Provides you with referral to a service within your area within about 72 hours, kind of maximum. Canada's suicide hotline. So if you're suffering from any mental issues, please consider calling them and you're thinking suicide might be an option, please consider reaching out and talking to them. Information on COVID-19 is go to the government site. They have the most up-to-date and accurate information. Family information line, again, 1-800, 365 days a year. Actual counselors on the end of the line, bilingual service for you, your family, and your extended family member can call this line. Sexual Misconduct Response Center is there as well for anything that might have to do with sexual misconduct. The Kids Help Phone is there. There's also a parent, parents can also text that line and get some advice as well. And CAF Kids is a line specifically for Armed Forces children. The ARC line is the military line for all things around COVID-19. So those resources are there for you. There are 2 more polls, so let us know if you feel you can apply what you've learned today in your daily living. That's awesome.
That's great. And like this can be related to any, well, specifically health related behavior, but we can take this model and put it into any area of your life, which is absolutely a really great foundation.
Absolutely. And this is the first of a whole series. So next week, I'll have Sean with me and we'll be talking about using tech to help you either achieve your goal or to refocus your goal or just to help with your training and the role that tech can play as far as training or improving your training or your timing is going to look like. So that's what we'll be doing next week. And our final poll as soon as I find it and share it properly. It's just, so we've been using this Demio platform for probably the last 3 months now. So just trying to gauge how people are liking it, whether it's a fairly good platform, if you like it, if you don't like it, just looking for some feedback on that. Randy, I don't have the link right in front of me at this moment. I know it is on CAF Connection in the webinar series. I will put my email address. If you email me, I will send you the link.
And feel free to share this information with your colleagues, because not everybody checks Facebook on a regular basis to know about these sessions. So spread the word. It's something to be gained by all.
But I'll make sure I have them for the next ones, for sure. Thanks, Randy, for reminding me that that's something I should have done. But anyway, so are there any questions, concerns, comments? Now's your time.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Leah.
You're welcome, Leona.
Thanks, Florin.
Thank you all for your time today.
Yeah, that's exactly where you would find the link.
Thank you, Sean. We look forward to your presentation.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, let's all work on our abs too, right? I like that.
Yes.
Abs in the kitchen and treats during our training.
I will plank right after this.
Me too. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Randy. Appreciated your comments and feedback.
Yeah, very valuable, very valuable. And thank you, Diane. Excellent job.
Thank you, Mavis.
My pleasure.
We'll see you later.
Have a great day, everyone.